Thank you very much, Laurence, for the nice introduction. And I would have been very happy to be there in Saint-Étienne, but unfortunately with the situation, it's more difficult. So I will talk about 3D X-ray CT with different contrasts, and I will give the principle of the method and show mainly application to bone tissue. So first of all, X-ray CT means computerized tomography. It was the first clinical tomographic imaging method, and it was invented by Gottfried Unsfield, who got the Nobel Prize for this discovery. And in 1979, and it was really an important discovery because it allowed to image a patient non-destructively without cutting in his slice, but to show slice of the anatomy in vivo on the patient. So it's really a technique that has developed a lot and that is used nowadays currently in the medical practice. But it can also be used as a tool for research, so it can be used at different scale. And in this talk, I will show you the basic principle of CT. It's the course part of my talk. And I will also show you that with this technique, you can actually obtain different contrasts, which is absorption, the standard X-ray CT contrast, which is absorption. But we can also do synchrotron monochromatic CT, as Laurence said in the introduction. And we can also do phase contrast CT and spectral CT, which are also quite innovative techniques. So first of all, what is CT? So the principle of CT is to obtain an image from acquisition made with the X-ray beam. So I will explain the principle from the first and second generation system, which were called translation and rotation system. And the principle is you have an object. So this, what you see in this image is just a slice of the anatomy that we want to recover. And you use an X-ray beam that will allow, each beam are represented in red and will allow to acquire a measurement from the slice. And this measurement will be the attenuation along the line. So when you have scanned the patient with different line, as it is shown in this example, you get a line of measurement which is known as one projection. And then you redo the experiment in another direction. So you do a rotation, you do a series of translation. It's why you have this name, translation rotation, and you get a second line of measurement. And you do that for all angles from 0 degree to 180 degree. And when you do that for all angles, you get a series of projection for all angle theta, which is the rotation angle, and you get this set of data. So this set of data in tomography is called the sinogram. From a mathematical point of view, it's also known as the Radon transform. And then from this set of measurement, which is not the image, obviously, but you can get the image by applying a reconstruction, a so-called reconstruction technique. So these are the basic information from which you will get the image of the section. So the system that I describe, the translation rotation system, is also known as parallel CT, and this was the principle of the very first X-ray CT system in the 70s. So it has some. It was the first time we could obtain a slice of the session, so it was very important. But it was quite long, And then there have been many improvements in the technique to improve acquisition time, image quality, and so on. And so the next development was the so-called fan beam CT, where instead of having translation of a pencil beam, you have an X-ray source that can irradiate the whole section in once. So you don't need anymore the translation motion, and then it allowed to increase the speed of the acquisition. So this will provide one slice, but when you, clinical doctor look at the patient, generally he wants several slices because he doesn't know exactly where is the tumor, for instance, that he is looking for. And then there was the spiral CT that allowed to do this fan beam CT acquisition, but by making a spiral motion, and then you could get not only a single slice, but a volume. And then there was an improvement in the detectors in CT, which allowed to have not only one array of detector, but a 2D array of detector, which is called multi-detector CT, which was often combined with spiral CT. Then you can get not a single slice, but directly in parallel several slices. And finally, you can also have the so-called cone beam CT, which allows to use a 2D array of detector and to get more directly a 3D image. So currently, the two systems are used, multi-detector CT, where the number of rows have increased, and cone beam CT, which is a bit different and, for instance, mainly used for dental imaging, for instance. So this is what is done. What I showed before is what is done for clinical CT. But you can also do micro CT, which is the same principle as X-ray CT, but to look at smaller objects or small animals. So in the years 2000, it was more and more important to image, for instance, mice because of the development of genetic, genomic, and so on. And people want to look at mice, and the conventional clinical CT were not adapted for this purpose. And also, you can look at small biopsies, for instance, and again, the clinical CT is not adapted because it's not the same range of spatial resolution. Then the 3D micro CT technique began. So to do 3D micro CT, you can do cone beam CT, which is illustrated actually here, where you have an X-ray source, the object, and a 2D array of detector, as represented here. And this is the standard geometry for micro CT. And nowadays, you have many systems available commercially to do micro CT. And you can do also parallel beam CT, which is the limit case of the previous one when the source goes to infinity. So you will also record a set of projection and then reconstruct a 3D object. And this is, for instance, the geometry that is possible on the synchrotron radiation micro-CT system that we have developed 20 years ago, and that I will describe later. So in CT, so we don't directly obtain the image because we measure a set of attenuation measurements, and we have then to solve what is called an inverse problem to get the image. So now we have to model a bit more what are these measurements. So these measurements actually are well modeled by the Beer-Lambert law, which says that when an X-ray beam crosses an homogeneous object, that means made of a single material, for a monochromatic X-ray beam, you have this beam is attenuated, and this attenuation is in exponential, follows an exponential law. So the measurement I at this point in the detector is equal to I0, which is the incident intensity, multiplied by exponential of minus mu times d. So d is the length of the homogeneous object, and mu is the linear attenuation coefficient of this object for this energy. So this is the case. So this is a basic law. When you have the human body or any object, it's a bit more complex because the mu is not homogeneous, of course. When you go through the human body, you cross different materials. You can cross bone, soft tissue, air, and so on. So you have to model that as an image f of x, y, z. And what you measure is now the integral, exponential of the integral of the image over the line D, which joins the X-ray source to the detector. So basically, if you take now the logarithm of I0 over I, what you get is this integral of the linear line integral of the linear attenuation coefficient. So F in tomography will be actually the linear attenuation coefficient. So what we measure are these P and index theta for the rotation angle on a point of the detector. So if we are in 3D, and now the problem is to recover F from this measurement. So this is the inverse problem we have to solve in tomography. So it's why it's called computerized tomography, because it has been possible to solve this problem only when we had computer to be able to process the data. So this problem is a linear problem if you assume that you have a monochromatic beam. And if you are in 2D, it's equivalent to inverse the so-called radon transform. And you have integral of state line. And if you are in 3D, the transform now is known as the X-ray transform, and you have also to invert it. And for this purpose, you have different approaches. So I will not, because I have not too much time, so I will not go too much into detail in the theory of image reconstruction, but I will show you the different class of methods. So the first class of methods are called analytic or analytical method. So I will explain it in 2D. So what you measure is this set of data, which is the radon transform of the sinogram. And from this set of data, you want to recover this image. And actually, when you express the problem, you can show that you have an analytical relationship between the projection and the image, and that you can invert this relationship and get a closed formula to recover your image from the projection data. So this popular solution is based on the so-called Fourier slice theorem that I will not detail. And finally, we get to the solution which has been most used for years and that is still used, which is the filtered back projection algorithm. So you can show that your image is the superposition of the back projection of the filtered projection. So it's basically a two-step algorithm, and it is very fast and can allow you to recover your image by using this simple formula. So I will show you on this image how the image is formed when you sum the contribution of the different angles. So this is the illustration. So here you sum the contribution of the different angles, and more you add angles, and more you see the reconstruction of your image. So this is the solution that's been implemented in clinics, and that has been used until maybe 10 years ago on all clinical CT with some adaptation, of course. Just, I want to show you that, for instance, this method is sensitive to the projection angle that you have. For instance, if you have not a complete data set, that means you don't go from 0 to pi, but 0 to, for instance, 100 degree, you will get this image, so the image will not be satisfying. So this method requires to have all the data between 0 and pi, for instance. So if it is the case, you have a good image, but if for some reason it's not possible, you will not get a good solution, and it's why it's interesting to use other kind of approaches. So I will briefly say that the second and third generation of method are called iterative algorithm. So in this case, you do not apply a formula, a closed formula like previously, but you reformulate the problem in the discrete space, and you solve it as the resolution of a very large linear system. So F stands for your vector, it's your image put as a big vector. P is a big vector containing all the projection data, and R is a big matrix containing all the information about the acquisition geometry. So it's called the projection matrix. So you have to solve a very big linear system, and it's not possible to invert it like that because it's too big and it's not necessarily invertible. So you generally use iterative algorithm, and it is equivalent to minimize some functional. So to find the image F that fits the data in a mean square quadratic error sense. So generally, the first iterative methods, you just want to fit the data, and it gave it is used for very popular algorithms like ART, CIRT, ELST, and later on it was possible to introduce a second term in the functional that you want to minimize that allows to put some constraint on your image and to improve the reconstruction. So these kind of techniques have been well known for more than 30 years, 40 years, but they were not used in clinical practice because it was simply too long. Just it take 20 more times than the previous analytical method, and then it was not used. But with the improvement of the computing power, it has been implemented on clinical CT, and now it's available. So, for instance, this is an image from what is implemented on CT Philips, from Philips, with a so-called method called iDose, which is an iterative method. And you can see if you want to lower the dose with the filter back projection algorithm, you will get a quite noisy image. And if you use this algorithm, you will have something much more nice, more smooth, and so it may have some interest in some cases. So in this second and third generation algorithm, I have also included what we call compressive sensing approaches, where the prior term use what is called some sparsifying transform and constraint like TV regularization. But I will not detail that more in this talk. And now there is a fourth generation of reconstruction method that is brought by all what is happening in deep learning. And you know that deep learning is revolutionizing a lot of image processing algorithm, and it can also be used to reconstruct the image to reconstruct the image and solve an inverse problem. So either we will try to go directly from the data, the cyanogram data, to the image, but most of the time you will first use an approximate reconstruction, for instance, given by the filtered back projection algorithm, and then you will try to apply a deep learning network to improve your solution. So here again, a very big application of deep learning in image reconstruction is for the low dose CT problem, to lower the dose because X-ray CT irradiates the patient in a way, so it's important to have a dose as small as possible. So there are many works where deep learning is used to do so-called low dose CT. Alors, since I am talking of deep learning, I will just make a very small parenthesis for using deep learning for bone super resolution, because so I said that I would mainly apply all what I will show you to bone imaging, and one important thing is to be able to see the structure, the fine microstructure of bone in vivo, and for this we have new systems that are called high resolution peripheral quantitative CT that allows to acquire peripheral bone at high spatial resolution, which means that about a spatial resolution of 100 micrometer, when the spatial resolution of the standard clinical system are more around 1 millimeter or 0.5 millimeter. So it allows to give to be able to see the peripheral structure of bone and the inner structure of bone. So the peripheral structure of bone is the cortical bone, and the inner structure is a trabecular bone. And you can see that in osteoporotic patient, for instance, you have a degradation of the trabecular microarchitecture, and this system allows to see this degradation, so it's very interesting. However, if we want to compute quantitative parameters from these images, it can remain a bit limited. It's why we have been interested in investigative deep learning approaches to improve the resolution of the image delivered by this HR-PQCT system. So we have been working on that with the PhD of Yufei Li, defended in 2019 in our lab. And I will just show you an example of, which may be not so easy to see the difference, but this is the high resolution image obtained from MicroCT. This is the low resolution image obtained from HR-PQCT. And this is the super resolution image that has been obtained with a deep learning approach. So this was a preliminary work. And just to let you know, there is a new PhD that has begun in the EUR by Réan Tulbo. This PhD started in 2021 in collaboration with Laurence Vico, with Marc Sément from the Laboratoire Hubert Curien, and he will make a presentation on what he's doing in super resolution with deep learning method tomorrow. So it was just a small parenthesis to introduce this work. So now I will go back to CT, and I said in the introduction that we can have different contrasts, and so the first thing that I will show is synchrotron radiation micro-CT, which allow to do monochromatic CT. So the system that was developed has been implemented at the ESRF, which is the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility in Grenoble. So a synchrotron is a system, an instrument that delivers that we will use to deliver X-ray beams, but which have the very specific properties because it can be X-ray beams with a very high flux, which is several orders of magnitude higher than a standard X-ray tube. And so the system was implemented in this so-called beamline, which is far from the ring. The beam starts from here, from the ring, and then propagates through this building. And in this building, then we get the X-ray beam, the synchrotron beam. This synchrotron beam, we extract a monochromatic beam. That means a beam with a single energy. We have a sample that is put on a sample stage that is rotated to perform acquisition under different angles, and we record the measurement on a 2D detector, which was based on a scintillator and a CCD camera. So this system has been developed at the end of the 1990s, and we have been able to obtain image with different voxel size. So from 10 micrometer to 0.2 micrometer, which is even higher than what you can do with the HR-PQCT system that I just talked about previously. So this is an example of what you record. This is a set of the raw data projections. Then it's not the 3D reconstructed image. Then you will apply a 3D reconstruction method, which was here simply the filtered back projection, and you will obtain the 3D volume of your sample. So if you look inside the sample, you can see that you have all the information on the gray level of the trabeculae inside your image. And if you do some basic thresholding, you can get the 3D rendering of the trabecular surface. So this is the principle of the system, and so the question is, why using synchrotron monochromatic CT and not just standard monochromatic CT? It's because we can have a monochromatic beam, and then we avoid so-called beam hardening artifacts that we can have in other image, and you can use the optimal energy for a series of samples. As I said before, the synchrotron beam has a very high photon flux, and then this means that you will have a lot of dose on the sample, but that you will have a very good signal-to-noise ratio in your image that will improve the segmentation and the quantification that we want to do after imaging. And it will be possible to reach nanometric spatial resolution. In addition, with the design of the system, we have 3D parallel CT, which allows exact reconstruction, which is not the case for cone beam system. And we will have the possibility also to do phase contrast imaging that we will see later on. So it will avoid various sources of blurs and artifacts. It's a fast acquisition. It will allow quantitative imaging and to have absorption and phase imaging. So if you just compare on a human iliac crest biopsy, this is a 3D image of iliac crest biopsy. this is the image, a slice of this image that you can have with the synchrotron microCT. And this was with the desktop microCT, which is a standard commercialized system. And you can see that you have something that is much, you avoid these blurs, and even inside the bone structure, you can see difference of gray level. That is not by chance, it's due to the mineralization of the bone. And this one acquisition that was done in vivo on the desktop CT and the synchrotron CT, you can see that you have much more noise on this image. Here, the voxel size was 10 micrometer. So we did, at the time, we did some experiment on phantom to show that the value that you reconstruct, the mu value, mu of x, y, z for the given energy, is really linear with the concentration of the mineral concentration, let's say. So we did that on a phantom that mimic different mineral concentration, and it's why we say that we have a quantitative imaging technique. So from the gray level of the image, we can know what is the mineralization of the bone. So this is a very important property. So, for instance, if you look at this bone, which is human cortical bone, now imaged at 5 micrometer, you can see that within the bone, you have different gray levels around the pores. So this is a slice. The black features are the pores. And you can see that around the pores, you have something that is dark gray, let's say, which corresponds to what is known in biology as the osteon of the bone, and that you have lighter gray in here that is known as interstitial bone, and the lighter gray bone is more mineralized. So you can really have a quantitative analysis of the bone. So this was imaging of cortical bone that was performed some time ago. And if you look closely in this cortical bone, you can see that you can a little see these little dots. And these little dots are not artifact. It is osteocyte lacunae. And here we image at 5 micrometer, which is not really sufficient to really see this osteocyte. But I just put you an illustration of a recent work that we did in collaboration with Laurence in Saint-Étienne, and which was to image mice after a spatial flight. As you know, she is a lot involved in studying bone in astronaut or after spatial flight. And we could have images of femurs of mice bone, and we could image on the synchrotron with synchrotron CT ground mice and flight mice, and this time with a voxel size of 0.7 micrometer. And as you can see on the ground mice, you have mice with a larger cortical thickness than on the flight mice. And if we analyze this image and we segment the inner part of the cortical bone, we can clearly see this osteocyte lacunae in the ground mice and in the flight mice. And we can also measure the volume of all these lacunae and color it as a function of the size. And we could see difference in this volume in ground mice and flight mice, and this was reported in this paper. So another application that I want to show you here is, I'm looking at the time, is the use of synchrotron microCT to see the bone vessels. So in bone, you have also a lot of vessels, and the classical technique to see the vessel in the bone is to use histology. But in this case, you have only 2D image, and it's more difficult to see the vascular structure in 2D. So we did some work with Marie-Hélène Lafage-Proust in Saint-Étienne to first image the 3D vessel network in decalcified rat tibia, decalcified sample, after injecting a contrast agent, because the vessel have no contrast in X-ray because they are not absorbent. So you put a contrast agent in the vessel and you can see the structure of the vessels. So this was the first experiment that were done with a voxel size of 5 micrometer. And later on, we could also show that due to the quantitative property of synchrotron microcity, you can avoid the decalcification of the bone. So you can do this quantification, this imaging of the vessel, even if the bone is not decalcifying. So that means that you can see simultaneously the bone and the vessel. So we did, this was used for a study aiming to characterize an anti-osteoporotic treatment in rats. And we could image bone, a lot of bone samples in control bone sample and image sample of rats, so it was not mice but rats, treated with PTH, and then we could analyze the parameters in these samples. So for this purpose, we had to develop a segmentation method to segment the different compartments of bone, to segment cortical bone, the pore in the cortical bone, trabecular bone, the pore in trabecular bone, and the vessels. And finally, we could extract different parameters from this bone and have really a quantification of the different quantity vessel in cortical bone and in trabecular bone. And just to show you a work in progress, we have been recently working on a new segmentation method to segment also bone, vessel, and background in mice. And this segmentation in mice was more difficult than in the rats. And we developed a method based on watershed, which used an original feature, which is the monogenic signal and the phase asymmetry. So I have no time to detail, but it was used to process image from mice which had been cancerous mice, let's say, with mice with a breast cancer, and we could again obtain an image of the vascular network in healthy mice and in metastatic mice. And just to show you that we could obtain a lot of parameters on the different structures. And this work is in progress. It has just been submitted in January. So now the second point that I wanted to show you is the possibility to do phase contrast imaging. So all that we have seen before was relying on the standard absorption contrast imaging, even if it was with synchrotron CT. Now you have another mode of contrast, which is called phase contrast. And actually, when you have X-ray beam propagating in space, if it goes through vacuum, you have no difference. And if it goes through an object, you have an attenuation, which is represented here as this green signal, which means that the signal is smaller, it is attenuated, but you have also a phase shift. And this phase shift is modeled by the complex refractive index, which include a real part and an imaginary part. So the imaginary part corresponds to the standard absorption part that we are used to image in CT, and the real part is modeled by this delta parameter, which is the phase decrement index. And this phase decrement index is represented here as this red line for bone, for instance. And you can see that it is quite high compared to mu. So that means if we are able to image this parameter, we will have image with a higher sensitivity than the conventional image that use absorption. So the problem is that it's not really simple to image this phase decrement index with a standard X-ray source, but thanks to the coherence properties of the synchrotron beam, it will be quite easy to image this effect with a synchrotron CT system. So here it is the same system that I showed before for the absorption system, and I will show you here, what I show you here is the standard absorption image on a bone scaffold. So this is the standard absorption image that is done when the detector is just closed just after the object. So now, if we put the detector further away, so we simply push the detector away, the beam will propagate. And due to this propagation, we will record phase contrast. So this is what, if you put the detector at 19 centimeters from the object, in this case, instead of the previous image, what you will get is this new image. And in this new image, you have phase contrast. This phase contrast, you can see it. For instance, if you look at the border of the object, you get a black and white feature, which is due to this phase contrast. And here, you could see only black, only you could thought that it was just a pore, but actually here you see something in the pore, and actually it is soft tissue. So with this phase contrast imaging method, you are more sensitive not only to bone, but also to soft tissue. And if you push the detector further away, you have even more phase contrast. So in this case, for this illustration, the image were simply reconstructed with a standard filtered back projection algorithm without doing anything special to recover the phase contrast. But if you want to do quantitative phase contrast, you have to model the problem. And now you have a problem that is more complex. I have no time, I'm afraid, to go into the detail. But what you measure is an intensity, and what you want to recover is this integral of delta, which is hidden in this intensity image. And what will also come in this equation is the propagator that takes into account the distance between your object and the detector. So if you really want to do phase contrast, quantitative phase contrast, phase imaging, let's say, you have to find this phi from the measurement. So you will have two steps actually. From the projection data, you will do a phase retrieval method, and then you can do a CT reconstruction method as previously to recover delta from phi. So you have a more complex inverse problem, let's say, where you have also to develop algorithm. So in the previous years, so this is if you apply a standard phase retrieval method, what you will get, for instance, here it was illustrated on a phantom, is this image where you can see the different object in your phantom, but you can notice here that you have something that is quite blurred, and this is so-called a low frequency artifact. And if you make a profile of this image, you can see that you have a non-homogeneous background. It's not flat as it should be, but it is circular. So we developed a method which allowed to introduce a regularization in this phase retrieval problem. And if you apply this regularization, you can see that for the same phantom, previously what you obtained without regularization was this image, and what you can obtain now is something that is more flat. So you can see the different structure as well, but you have improved the accuracy of the image because you have eliminated this non-flat background, and it will be more easy to do quantification after that. So now we will use this technique to see let's say the ultrastructure of bone. That means not only the microstructure of bone, but the smaller structure in the bone. And actually, if you look at the bone, this is a piece of a scheme of cortical bone. You have the canals here that contains, in particular, the vessels that we saw previously. You have this cylindrical structure, which are the osteons that we also saw previously. And inside this osteon, you can see the small dots, which are the osteocytes. So the osteocyte, I already showed you an example in the mice in flight. But the osteocytes are very important. They play a very fundamental role in bone remodeling, that is the reparation of bone, and that is the dynamic of the bone. Actually, these osteocytes, they are connected. So here you have the osteocyte, and they are connected through even smaller channels, which are called the canaliculi, sorry, and which are very important. This system, including the osteocyte and the canaliculi, is very important to assess the quality of bone. And also in bone at this scale, you have not only this osteocyte and their canaliculi, but you can have also what is called microcracks. And these microcracks also have a role in bone remodeling. And again, they are quite difficult to see in 3D. They have mainly been studied in histology or optical microscopy or scanning electron microscopy. So we will use this phase contrast imaging to see both the osteocyte and their canaliculi, and to see microcracks. So I will start with microcracks. So, for instance, this is an illustration of a work that we did in collaboration with the team of Philippe Zissé in Bern and with Uwe Wolfram in Edinburgh to study different types of biomechanical constraint in bone. And in this case, we use phase micro-CT with a voxel size of 0.7607 micrometer, and to image cortical bone that had been submitted to different constraints. And according to the constraint, we could see different kind of bone microcracks. So here it was really big microcracks. So you can see here the microcracks are all these dark lines that appear around the osteons. So we could make a quantitative analysis of these microcracks in 3D in the bone submitted to different type of solicitation. And I want also to show you another work that we did in collaboration with David Mitton and from LBMC and Hélène Follet from LIOS, where we also image the the bone macro damage and the propagation of the microcrack after a biomechanical test, yes. And we used also the same technique, which is micro-CT phase imaging at a voxel size of 0.7 micrometer. And it was possible to quantify the pores, the osteocyte in yellow, and to segment also the microcrack in 3D and extract some quantitative parameters. And concerning the osteocyte system, I showed you previously this image of the osteocyte in mice, but we could not see the canaliculi joining the osteocyte. So here we use phase CT, but even at higher spatial resolution, it's on a phase nano CT system at 60 nanometer, and we could image. We could acquire different image at different distance and perform phase retrieval, and finally obtain such image where you can see it's a piece of human bone at image at 120 nanometer, where you can see the small black features here are the osteocyte, and you can see on this projected image that you see little channels, which are the canaliculi joining the different osteocytes. So this is reconstructed in 3D and then a projection image to display this osteocyte and their connection. And you can see that in different osteons. So we did a work to segment all this structure in 3D. And here you have a rendering of the osteocyte in yellow and all the canaliculi, the small canaliculi that join them in 3D in space. And it was quite challenging to obtain this image because it required a lot of development in image segmentation. Okay, so I showed you mainly example of phase CT in bone, but it's very well adapted to look at other soft tissue in general. So here is a work that was done to look at the brain of mice, and where you could see a lot of feature with phase CT in brain mice. And this is also a work in progress, which is done in liver, where you can also see the vessel network in the liver. And also another work has been done to image the earth fibers, so in earth samples also. So it provides really what we call actually currently like a 3D virtual histology technique. And now I will finish on the spectral CT. So the spectral CT is a new generation of X-ray CT that is being developed for clinical imaging. And actually, when we are doing CT in standard clinical CT, our beam is not monochromatic. It is monochromatic only when we do synchrotron CT because we can monochromatize the beam. And then when we use this polychromatic source, we have some artifacts that are generated because actually we solve the problem as if it was linear, and effectively it is non-linear. So there have been, a long time ago, there have been, Alvarez and Malkowski have proposed to do dual energy CT, where you can do a scan at low energy and high energy. So you have you use the lower part of energy of the beam and the higher part of energy of the beam. And dual energy is used also a lot in bone to separate bone and soft tissue. So the principle is quite old, but now you have a new generation of photon counting detectors that allows to make acquisition in different energy beams. So what you see here are different energy beams, and you will be able with these new detectors to sort the photon and to have different beams of energy, what we call energy resolved data. So there are only a few prototypes currently, for instance, in New Zealand, in Marseille, and in Lyon, we have a prototype from Philips, which is located at Stermet. So what is the interest of this SpectralCity is that you will be able not only to reconstruct the standard absorption image that is called HU image in clinics, where you have a gray level associated to the absorption, but you will be able to reconstruct different maps for the different components in your image. So for instance, here, it's an image acquired with two contrast agents, gold and iodine. So you can have a gold map, a iodine map, and the standard photoelectric Compton map, and you can overlay all this image to get the color image. It's why SpectralCity is sometimes called Color City. So this is an example of image that has been obtained on the Lyon prototype by our colleague Simon Ahmed by using iodine and gadolinium contrast agent. And just to let you know, in this case, what you want to, you have your image in the different, you have your data, measured data in the different energy beam, and what you want to reconstruct now is not just the new image in its globality, but it's the individual component in, for instance, soft tissue, bone, and contrast agent. So you will typically use this energy result data to get what we call the material maps. So for instance, soft tissue, bone, and contrast agent, and then that you can reconstruct in 3D to get the 3D color map. So I think that at this stage I have not too much time to go in the problem, but just to let you know that we have been working on this material decomposition problem. That is the problem to go from the measured data to the material maps. And for this problem, we have been proposing regularized techniques that improve the result of non-regularized technique in the past. And that recently we have also been using deep learning to also do this material decomposition. And we have a paper that has been accepted, it's 2021, in 2021 in IEEE Access, where we have shown that we could use successfully a deep learning technique based on UNet to do this material decomposition. And that this technique has the advantage to be very fast compared to the standard optimization-based technique. And just to finish, we have currently, we had a project, I was leading a NINER project, which will make the link with bone also imaging, where the aim was to use SpectralCity for knee imaging to see if we can use this technique to see both the bone and the cartilage using SpectralCity. So this is, for this project, we have done synchrotronicity imaging of the knee. We at a spatial resolution of 15 micrometer, and so from which we can clearly see nicely the trabecular structure in the knee, but we can also segment the cartilage and quantify the cartilage. And the aim was to compare what we can obtain with the SpectralCity prototype which does not allow to reach this resolution of 50 micrometer, but which already give 250 micrometer resolution, and which allows also to see nice feature in the cartilage. So, and for which we have also applied a deep learning technique for doing the material decomposition. So, in conclusion, I will now conclude that because I think the time is over. So we have seen that 3D X-ray CT allows to span a large range of scale, and it can go from the organ scale in vivo to the cellular scale. It provides imaging with an isotropic spatial resolution, and we have seen that we can use different contrast, absorption, which is a standard one, the linear attenuation coefficient when we can use monochromatic CT, the phase, and the concentration of different elements when we can use spectral CT. So for all these problems, we have challenges in inverse problem, which is the CT reconstruction or the phase CT or spectral CT reconstruction, which is the first step to get the image. But we have also challenge in image analysis because generally when we have an image, we want to make some image analysis to deliver some quantitative parameters to the biologist or the medical doctors. And so this technique can have application in general from medicine to biology and permit to do this virtual histology, as we have seen. So I would acknowledge my colleagues in Creatis. We have participated to some in some way to the work. My colleague at ESRF, which had also contributed a lot to all the experiments related to ESRF, and some collaborators, but my list is not exhaustive here. So thank you for your attention, and I am ready to answer some questions.